The weather's going to continue to stay very active across the United States with more big storms on the horizon. We could even see some more severe weather in areas like the northern and central plains, the Midwest, and perhaps even into parts of the Ohio Valley as we go into this weekend and next week. We're also going to be talking about two different tropical systems, one of which is happening right now, and we have another tropical storm that could form in the Gulf of Mexico as we go into next week, and that could bring even more problems. And then lastly, we're going to talk about a record-breaking weather pattern that we're currently in, and that's going to continue into the weekend. We're eventually going to start to see some record-breaking high temperatures enter into parts of the southern plains and as well as the southeast. Let's begin with what's happening across the United States right now in terms of weather, which you'll notice right off the bat, a big red blob back over in the Gulf of Mexico, and this is actually Tropical Storm Alberto. This was named yesterday as a tropical storm, and it is making landfall in Mexico. Overall, not a really strong tropical storm, sustained winds around 40 to 45 miles per hour, so nothing really out of the ordinary here. But the one biggest thing with this is that it did bring an overnight tornado risk to South Texas. It also brought a lot of rainfall, so some flooding was a problem over there. But otherwise, this is going to continue to move west, eventually into the Pacific Ocean, where it will probably continue to weaken as it moves across Mexico. For the remainder of the lower 48, there's really not much happening right now. You'll notice really no big red blobs anywhere else comparatively to the last few days. Really, it's been pretty quiet overall for most of the Great Plains in the Northeast and even the East Coast for the last few days. But overall, we're going to start to see a bit more of an active weather pattern, especially back over in the northern plains and Midwest as we go into this weekend. In addition to that, we'll have another tropical system likely developing here pretty soon. I also wanted to bring your attention to a little small spitting area just east of Florida. We are going to be watching for a new tropical disturbance to try to develop east of Florida during the next few days. Something else we'll be talking about here in just a moment. And this is Tropical Storm Alberto from earlier this morning, and notice this is the wind field with tropical storm force winds. It actually goes pretty far up to the northeast and west as it is a large rotating area, but overall the sustained winds maximize at around 50 miles per hour before it officially makes landfall in Mexico. It's mostly a rain threat and also a low-end tornado risk. There's really not a whole lot when it comes to wind, just ordinary gusty winds for the most part right along the coastline, with tropical storm warning still in effect for the time being. Storm surge up to 4 feet also still being a possibility. Now, aside from Alberto, we actually do have a potential for another tropical storm to develop in the Gulf of Mexico as we go into the weekend and into next week, where we have another area of development with a medium chance right now of developing into a tropical disturbance, and it's going to basically impact the same exact areas. Texas and Mexico under the gun for the potential for another tropical storm sometime during the beginning of next week, and if it does develop, it'll probably produce very similar impacts to what Alberto is currently producing. And we are still watching for a very low chance of some sort of tropical depression or storm developing right off the coast of Florida. It'll likely make landfall back over in Georgia or very far northeastern Florida. Again, very minimal impacts coming out of this. I don't think it'll really be anything too big of a deal. Just some rain, some wind, and also some high waves offshore. Definitely going to be some storm surge potentially in some of those areas, but overall it should be very, very minimal. Nothing like a hurricane or anything like that coming that direction. Over the next few days around the Gulf of Mexico, we'll continue to watch for some showers, but the bulk of the rain has already moved out from Alberto and Texas. Once we go into Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, a new tropical storm will likely develop in the southwestern Gulf. It'll probably crash right back into the same place in Mexico. We'll be watching for some showers in South Texas, maybe a low-end tornado risk sometime on Sunday or even into very early Monday. By the time we go into Tuesday into Wednesday, that's moving west. This particular system will probably not bring as much rain as what Alberto brought, which is good news if you're back over in Texas. And by the time we go into the middle and end of next week, it still will probably remain pretty active along the Gulf Coast states, right along the coastline, but overall not looking at anything when it comes to another tropical storm, probably at least for a week after this next disturbance during the beginning of the week. And overall, most of the rain has fallen across Texas. We'll see a little bit more rainfall between now and tomorrow, but it's very minimal rain overall. By next week, we'll get another tropical system more than likely. How much rain falls in Texas is very uncertain. The European model going with a very conservative approach with anything from 1/10 of an inch up to an inch of rain, and that's about it. So it looks like right now the next tropical system won't be as bad as what Alberto has been so far to South Texas. Now, changing gears to the severe weather threat for today, we actually have a couple areas to watch for. We got one in the northeast for New England, where there will be damaging winds and hail today. Overall tornado risk is near 0. And then back over in the high plains and also back into parts of the central plains like Nebraska and even into South Dakota, there will be some damaging winds and hail today. We also have a chance for an isolated tornado or two back over in parts of western Nebraska. So maybe an isolated tornado or two there. We could even get a small 5% tornado risk. I wouldn't rule it out, but overall it's going to be a pretty low threat. I don't think we'll be live today. I don't think it's really going to be needed for today's threat. Tomorrow's threat is a little bit more up there, I think, in terms of a maybe potential live stream, so just make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. Have another large marginal and slight risk anywhere from Utah and also back into Arizona, back into Wisconsin, which you know the severe weather season's getting interesting when we start to get severe weather over in the southwestern United States. Overall, main concern for tomorrow for flying fences Friday will be damaging winds and hail. Another low-end tornado risk anywhere from Minnesota back into Nebraska. Again, maybe a live stream. Don't really know about this one. I think there'll be a better chance of a live stream for the severe weather threat in the Midwest on Saturday, which we'll talk about here in just a second. Here's the severe weather timing for today. Some storms will fire up right around 1 to 2 o'clock across parts of western Nebraska. Overall, these will move pretty quickly to the east, and they will be producing mostly a hail and wind threat. Anything that can kind of stay discreet, especially on the southern side of any clusters, will have an elevated chance at a tornado. Even then, the tornado threat, again, will be low today. Once we go into this evening, these storms will start to weaken out, especially after daylight heating winds down. And eventually into Friday morning, things are really definitely settling down there across parts of Nebraska. And then for Friday afternoon, more storms are in the forecast, especially across South Dakota, where storms will blow up across this corridor from South Dakota back into Minnesota. Some storm activity also in Nebraska. Main concern, again, will be wind and hail. Any storms that can stay discrete or semi-discrete could produce a tornado or two. Even a linear setup could favor maybe maybe a QLCS tornado, but that's about it. And eventually, as we go into Saturday morning, things are starting to dry out for our next severe weather threat, which will probably be on Saturday in the Midwest, which we'll talk about here in just a second. Now, talking about the large-scale weather pattern, because we are going to be talking about the potential for a record-breaking weather pattern across a large chunk of the country. It's already been happening for the last several days in New England, but that's going to start to shift, actually, down to the south and southwest from the origin of where it's at right now. And this is the jet stream, which will give you an idea of the weather pattern that we currently have. Originally, we had a very dominant ridge on the eastern tier of the country. Over the next few days, this is going to start to move more down to the south and west, and this is going to kind of start to allow for more of a building ridge in parts of the Mississippi Valley, which will lead to many areas back over in the southern plains reaching record-breaking territory when it comes to temperatures. And the jet stream will stay very far up here to the north, meaning that overall the weather pattern is going to stay pretty quiet, I think, for the East Coast and also back into the southern plains. But overall, back over on the Gulf Coast and also into the northern plains in the Midwest and the Ohio Valley, I think will still be active as we go into the weekend. So this one looks like this weekend that high pressure system retreats back to the west, starts to dominate in the southern plains. Eventually, as we go into Sunday and as well as into Monday, low pressure moves across the northern plains. This will bring, I think, some severe weather both Saturday and Sunday to the Ohio Valley and the Midwest. Again, we'll talk more about that in just a second. By the time we go into Monday into Tuesday, this jet stream stays very far up here to the north. High pressure moves even further back to the west, which means it's going to even be drier and warmer across the central and southern plains. Eventually, as we go into late next week, I think the weather pattern could get very active across a large chunk of the country. Meridional jet stream like this does favor more large-scale storms. So just before the 4th of July, I think we're going to start to get some more big storms in the country, which could lead to some more big severe weather events. So something to watch for. But again, most of that will be mostly focused to the northern plains, central plains, Midwest, and the Ohio Valley. So for the next few days, storms will continue across the Midwest and the northern plains. We are going to have surface low pressure developing across parts of the central and northern plains on Saturday. This could actually lead to a bit more of an organized severe weather setup as we go into Saturday afternoon across parts of the Midwest. Overall, the threat for severe weather still not super high, but damaging winds, hail, and a couple tornadoes definitely a possibility. I think we could be live on Saturday, so make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. By the time we go into Sunday, that storm activity will move to the east. Overall, the Ohio Valley does look dry. This low pressure system will probably move quick enough to the east where most of the storm activity will be in the northeast for Sunday. By Monday, high pressure dominates for the Midwest, at least for Monday afternoon and evening. By the time we go into Tuesday, there could be some showers and storms in the Midwest, but this remains uncertain. And eventually, as we go into Wednesday and as well as into Thursday, storm activity will start to increase again anywhere from the central and southern plains back over into the Ohio Valley and northeast. And by the time we get to next weekend, things look very uncertain, but we could see a very dominant high pressure system, which does mean if that happens, it'll be very dry and warm across the Ohio Valley, which could eventually set up another record-breaking weather pattern, which again, that's still very uncertain at this time. And then for the next several days, warm air will continue to dominate on the east coast and back even into the southern plains. This means that above average temperatures are still in the forecast. Record-breaking high temperatures will continue to be a possibility, and even as we go into the beginning of next week, really warm air will start to dominate in the central plains and back into the Midwest, where more record-breaking high temperatures are possible, and then possibly some relief by the tail end of next week in the northeast. But again, that really remains uncertain at this time. Here are all the record-breaking temperatures over the next few days, beginning with today. Again, notice a large area from the northeast back even into Atlanta, Georgia, where there will be some record-breaking high temperatures. Many areas forecasted to get into the mid-90s. This is tomorrow. That warm weather will continue to stay across parts of the mid-Atlantic region as well. Ohio could even have some record-breaking high temperatures. By Saturday, this starts to trickle a bit further down to the south and west, and even over in California and Oregon, we could see some record-breaking high temperatures. By Sunday, those record-breaking high temperatures are into Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Mississippi, where temperatures will get as high as the low 100s. And then by Monday, things become again a bit more uncertain, but many areas still expected to be challenging record-breaking high temperatures. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you're not already.